Good morning. I'm Derek Fildebrandt. Welcome to The Pipeline, the Western Standard's weekly Wednesday nooner. I'm joined today in studio by Western Standard columnist and podcast editor extraordinaire, Corey Morgan. Good day, Corey.
Good day.
And Dave, I'm going to unmute you, but you got to be careful with all your background noise there. Dave, can we hear you?
I hope so.
Okay, it's all solved now. Very good. Dave Naylor, news editor for Western Standard, self-isolating somewhere in Calgary.
I'm cold. I'm cold. It's damn cold.
You know, hey, you didn't have to ride the crack train all the way here today, so complain to me. Well, speaking of the crack train, today we're going to be talking about Calgary's what I think we're going to essentially, unfortunately, have to be calling it the crack train. What is happening to public transit in Calgary and in major cities across the West and in Canada today, right now? The lockdown, opioid epidemics, other drug epidemics, what they are doing to public transit around Canada right now. We have very firsthand experience with that, with the train that runs right by our offices here. We'll also be talking about Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi's latest lawsuit. And it's for something that's shockingly familiar, being a suit essentially for doing allegedly doing the exact same thing that he was sued for defamation for last time, just with somebody else. We're going to get to that. And a Edmonton area church pastor arrested for holding Sunday service. No, it was not Emperor Nero. It was the Alberta government. So we're going to jump into it. We're going to begin with Calgary's crack train. This was actually video that came to us through Corey Morgan. I think a contact of yours gave it to us. Maybe we'll actually throw it straight to you. You give us a brief description of how you came into this, what happened, and then we're actually going to pull up the video itself.
Sure. I mean, Dave's written about the problem getting on city transit as well in the past. And what I'd done is put out a tweet because it was the other Wednesday when I came here. I rode the train. I saw the usual mess, station, addicts, garbage. I mean, it's just gotten awful. And I tweeted as much. It's where I share my thoughts and express myself. And it led to actually a chain of responses from other people, about their experiences on the train. And then a fellow who, wanted to remain anonymous, understandably, who rides daily, picked up this video just the other day of a fellow smoking meth right on the Calgary Blue Line. So we'll pull that up, perhaps.
Sixth Street West Station. Doors whoever wants it.
So, yeah, I mean, that really just kind of drives home to a lot of people who haven't been riding the train. There aren't a lot of commuters. It's kind of a whole big issue with a lot of factors. The trains have been virtually empty because the downtown's virtually empty. We have a growing opioid epidemic. It really is. There's addicts everywhere and more so, I mean, for a lot of factors, from the downturn of the economy to CERB facilitating a lot of people to become more deeply addicted. Basically, the weather got cold. These guys are driven onto the trains to keep warm, or is a spot that's convenient for them. And what was really almost the most shocking part of the video, if you saw at the end, a woman sat down next to him and didn't bat an eye. And the guy who shot the video said he talked to her afterwards. And he said, "Why didn't you get up and move?" She said, because it was along the lines of, son, if I had to do that, I'd have to get up and move every day when I get on the train. Like, it's become almost standard as a part of riding the train that you're going to deal with that sort of bold picture of addicts. And of course, there was a lot of stills and other things, and I'm going to do a piece on it later of just the amount of things people have been seeing. I think the city was kind of hoping that this would just be not noticed and forgotten. It's a problem they don't want to deal with, and it's coming to a head.
Just riding in just today, I got to one of the train stations coming in. I try to save on parking, so I take the train in now. And there was probably 3 fire trucks, 2 or 3 EMS ambulances there. Just a whole thing. It looked like if there had been some police in that mix, I would have thought there was a bombing or something. It was just a whole crowd of emergency services were at the train station. And I walked over, talked to one of the peace officers. I said, overdose? And he just said, your words, not mine. I mean, there's an overdose right at the train station as I was coming in this morning. While I'm on the train coming downtown, there was a woman clearly cracked on something. She wasn't consuming it where I could see her, but she was walking around the train smoking a cigarette and for about 5 minutes drinking out of an empty cup that I guess was providing some kind of magic water or liquid. I mean, she wasn't threatening, but she was walking around sitting much closer than even you or I, like right up beside people, just smoking. And everyone was too afraid to tell her even to put out your cigarette. It's getting, and obviously not wearing a mask. I mean, you're not hard to wear. How do you smoke on the train wearing a mask, right? You can't wear a mask while you're smoking on the train. It's getting horrendous. And, this Calgary City's Council's war on cars to try and make it so expensive to drive your car through the city, particularly to park downtown. The only reason they can get people to ride public transit is because they make it so miserable to drive. They're not doing a very good job of making public transit actually appetizing and pleasurable or convenient or safe to ride. Dave, we'll go to you for your thoughts and your very recent experiences with this.
Yeah, I had what I called my C-train ride from hell just a couple of weeks ago, Derek. As you mentioned, the train stops right outside our plush downtown offices. Waiting at the platform, there was a gentleman obviously under the influence of something, yelling at the top of his voice using language that would make my mother blush. Not sure what he was angry at, but he was yelling and using all sorts of nasty language. And he got on the same train as me, and I thought, oh, this is going to be good. So he continued berating whoever he was angry at the top of his voice, not wearing a mask, of course. Fortunately, he got off a couple stops later and was last seen heading into an office tower. He was quickly replaced by a young woman who was very, very ill. She sounded like she had some sort of massive chest infection. She was coughing and coughing and coughing, and didn't wear a mask. She was obviously sick and just ended up curling up full length on one of the seats and trying to go to sleep, but her coughing kept waking her up. And to complete the ride, there was a man who was obviously suffering from mental issues who just walked from one length of the train to the other, turned around and walked back, talking under his breath without a mask on. And that was just one ride, Derek. You're exactly right. How do they expect people to feel safe in their commutes? And this was not at 10 o'clock at night. This was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's just a crazy situation on our crack trains, as you call them.
Yeah, we had a comment from one of our listeners. Says Philip Campbell says, just go by the old crack max to see all the issues in the downtown core. I was nearly attacked there just a couple of months ago, just for being there. I was wearing a suit, and I guess if you're wearing a suit, that means they think you must have more than a toonie in your pocket. They'd be surprised, but they'd be pleasantly disappointed if they had succeeded in getting into my pockets. But, for those who don't know, Crack Max shut down. I mean, it was so badly branded as Crack Max that Max sold the location. I forget what it is now. It might be, is it a Circle K or what is it?
They're all Circle Ks.
Is it a 7-Eleven?
It's funny. It's a Circle K, and it's still, it hasn't changed. The same crowds there. I mean, I lived in Calgary in the apartment.
Yeah, but is it? It's
ago.
not a Max, but like what is it?
It's Circle K.
Yeah. It's not even a Max anymore, but it's universally still known as Crack Max.
Yes.
Like they could have put a Victoria's Secret in there, and it will still be called the Crack Max lingerie store. Like it's just permanently branded as Crack Max because it's just such a terrible, terrible place to be right now. and our public transit's increasingly looking like it.
Well, it used to be just focused kind of on that location. Every city's got one. I mean, that's just part of being a large city. You're going to have kind of a seedier end of town, a place where the addicted gather and exchange and so on. But the problem now is that it's all over the place, and they're using these trains as almost a pipeline to get around. I mean, another thing that I have a friend who lives out by Westbrook, which was never a high end of town. But since the train is gone there in the last few years, and I looked up the stats, crime up there has almost quadrupled because it brings a convenient, way for the people, the troubled people, to get into residential neighborhoods and break into garages and cars and a lot of property crimes that are happening up there. So this is a really big city issue that's been sliding under the radar. I appreciate that guy putting out the video because, we can talk and talk, but sometimes just kind of seeing it for yourself to see how bold and how real this is. You don't have to take a bunch of rides to find a scene like that. As we said, we can all relate, and we just one ride at a time with something that's happened on there. And the city's really reticent about cleaning it up. I think it's time they wake up. They got bigger priorities than public art and stuff. If you want to be a world-class city and retain tourists, it doesn't matter how beautiful your public art is. If they take one ride in that train, they're never coming back.
Yeah, I've traveled the world quite a bit. There are going to be. I've been to some seedy cities in Eastern Europe, and the trains are not as sketchy as they are right here in Calgary. There's no excuse for it. Philip Campbell says actually it's now known as the Cracked K.
Okay.
It's got a ring to it, but I don't know. I still know it as Crack Max. Everyone I know still calls it Crack Max, but
I think, gentlemen, we can't forget that this is a societal problem. These people are addicted. They obviously can't help themselves, and then right now they have nowhere to go. And it's minus a gazillion degrees out there, so they go to the obvious place to keep them warm and continue with their addictions. So it's going to need a massive effort. You can't just put one or two more transit cops on the line and expect that to clean it up. It's going to have to be a massive undertaking by all three levels of government to try and help these people, and they do need help.
Absolutely. I just to follow up on that, and I want to, as I'm going to be following up on this story more in the next while, like it is a symptom of a much bigger problem. And these are people, these are Albertans, these are Calgarian citizens, and they need help. You can't just chuck them off the train. It's cold out, and they're still addicted, and now they're just off a train. That could lead to them breaking into apartment lobbies or other issues. We need places for them to go. Part of the problem is shelters are there, and apparently there's a lot of shelter space. There's lots of room right now, but they won't take you when you're outright wasted, and they won't let you smoke or inject your drug of choice in the shelter. They got to maintain a degree of control. So that's why, again, they're seeking other warm places to do it. So it's a big.
There's not an easy answer to it. I mean, we've been talking. I think David's right to pivot the conversation. We're talking about how this is unsafe to the public, how this makes it essential. Why are we even paying $1 bazillion for these LRTs when they're just not safe? They're not pleasant to use. Those are, I think, important points. But I think the two of you have been right to pivot this conversation towards. These are people who need help. I don't know anybody who is happy to be addicted to crack or to meth or to opioids. No one wants to be addicted to these things, and there's many reasons why that's happening. Addictions are spiking right now during lockdowns. The train might literally be the only place some of these people can be around other people. They might just be happy to be around humans. It's hard to say because there's going to be so many different reasons for it, and there's not an easy answer to it because the shelters are right to not allow people to do drugs on site or to allow them in severely debilitated on site. But these people got to go somewhere, and we don't want them to freeze to death. They're human beings. They need our help. There's not really an easy answer. But you can't let people shoot up in these shelters because then the whole place falls apart because there's a lot of people in those shelters who are trying to get clean.
Yeah, and I should point out, though, there are some groups that are doing some really good work while we're at it. A van you'll see quite constantly at the Westbrook station and around. I saw them the other day is the DOAP team. It's DOAP. They're a nonprofit organization. They get out there to help people who are in dire straits. They often take them to Alpha House, which isn't a homeless shelter. It's a detox sort of place to bring them down. Safe space. So, I mean, if somebody sees something like that and somebody's really in distress, there are services. If you call, they will get out there and do what they can to help these people.
Well, maybe just while we're at it, we should give a shout out to one of our sponsors, One Direction Calgary. It's run by a man named Dean Hopkins. He is a veteran of the British Army. He was in the artillery and a few of the other subservices of the British Army. He's a longtime Calgarian, though. He finished his time with the British Army fighting for the Empire. And he runs One Direction Calgary, which is a charity that is helping homeless veterans in the Calgary area, around Alberta in general, but particularly in Calgary. We do have a serious homelessness problem, but there's a special place in my heart for when we see those who have served our country not living the lives I think they thought they would when they finished their service. So if we do have ads for it on our website. We've given them some discounted ad space. We're really happy to work with them. They're a great group. So anybody watching who's interested in helping, you could just Google One Direction Calgary, or you can find their ads on our site. Check them out if it's something you guys are interested in doing. Well, let's move on to something maybe a little more funny. Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi is getting sued again for pretty much the exact same allegation. We're not going to say he did something because we don't want to get sued for defamation. But he is alleged to have done something which is suspiciously similar to another lawsuit for which he had to settle out of court, which ended up being quite a pricey legal bill. Dave Naylor, why don't you tell us about net defamation suit part 2?
Derek, this is a story we had exclusively yesterday on the website. It involves a gentleman called Mike Taringo. He's a Calgary businessman, quite well known in the city. And he's alleging that Mayor Nenshi, in 2 separate oral conversations, called him a Italian racial stereotype. We won't repeat the alleged slander here, but an Italian stereotype. He's got 2 whistleblowers that have come forward to confirm or allegedly confirm that this is what Nenshi said. So he's seeking $190,000 from the mayor. If you remember, 6 years ago, the city was on the hook for $300,000 in Nenshi legal bills after he allegedly defamed Calgary businessman, developer, home builder Cal Wenzel in a similar sort of wording, similar sort of phrasing. They went to court, settled out of court. But Nenshi and city taxpayers were on the hook for $300,000. City council put a halt to that and told Nenshi that he would have to pay for it himself. And he did so by hosting a series of fundraisers. So second time in just a few years that the mayor has been accused of uttering racial slurs against businessmen.
So this, we're not allowed to repeat the defamation. Otherwise, we're committing potential defamation. Oh, shoot. We're not allowed to repeat the alleged defamation. I don't mean to be pedantic here. We're trying to be careful here. We don't want to get sued. We prefer membership money to go to writing and broadcasting and fun stuff, not towards lawyers. The alleged defamation, a Italian racial slur. We might be able to describe the previous lawsuit with Cal Wenzel, where he called him the Godfather. Is it safe to say that this Italian does Naheed Nenshi have a problem with Italians? I don't know.
He has a problem with businessmen.
He has a problem with businessmen. Yeah, he has a problem with Italian businessmen.
Wenzel's not Italian.
No, I suppose not. So, yeah. Although the plaintiff in this second case is in fact Italian, I believe. So, yeah, Dave, do you want to just elaborate on, insofar as we can say without getting in legal trouble here, about the Italian racial slur?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to let that be up to the imagination of our viewers, Derek. I will say that in a similar case, he did call Cal Wenzel I think it was a Godfather-like figure, referring to the Italian mafia, as the godfather of a family. So that got him into trouble for the Wenzel one. The instances of this case involving Taringo happened during a land use development meeting in which Taringo's company was trying to get a land use deal done so he could build an apartment building on land he owns down in Kensington. And this was made to other councillors who have since come forward as whistleblowers. We cannot name them for legal reasons, whistleblowing legislation. But they've come forward to say Nenshi made the comment twice that day, once in the morning session, once in the evening dinner break. So whether or not it's a pattern of behavior, I think that's for somebody else to decide.
Corey, I got a serious question for you. Is racism against Italians and the Irish the only acceptable forms of racism in 2021?
Well, even then, if we're looking at this lawsuit, then perhaps not even there. So I mean, people are getting tired of, it isn't acceptable anymore. I know it's in a joking status, but of people using somebody's ethnicity as a means to
We'll take everyone, but not the Irish.
Yeah, got to be able to joke about somebody. Come on,
someone has to be the butt of something.
I guess a lot of it's context and the vitriolic nature of how it's coming out.
Yeah. So, okay, so this is the second time this is alleged to have happened. The first time Nenshi settled out of court with Cal Wenzel, but he essentially he got the bad end of that deal. It was going to be more expensive to go. I remember I was at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation at the time, and I filed a Freedom of Information request with the city to see if Nenshi was charging taxpayers for his legal bills. Turned out he wasn't, and I remember I put this out and I said, "Hey, look, Nenshi's not charging taxpayers as he said. Good for you." And then I remember he had this epic Twitter meltdown. And I think this is his last epic Twitter meltdown. I think after that, his chief of staff took his Twitter machine away. And then he was just like, how dare you file a Freedom of Information request for this? Like, it's not your business. It wasn't my business to see if you're spending taxpayers, like hundreds of thousands of taxpayers' dollars on this. He had this meltdown and denied it. But then after the fact, he still billed it to the city. Now, he said he would hold a fundraiser to pay it back. I'm assuming that he did. I haven't seen final documents, but I'm assuming. Did. Yeah, okay. So he has. But he did still bill it to the taxpayer. So he essentially used the taxpayer as bridge loan, an interest-free bridge loan to get this. And then, I mean, that kind of fundraiser after the fact, when you're the sitting mayor, there's obviously going to be people with expectations when they're making donations of that kind.
When you toss 30 or 40,000 at somebody, you never know, but it's a big contribution to make for somebody who keeps saying he wants to get big money out of politics. Just because you brought a new issue in to raise the funds for doesn't mean it's not a political contribution. You're really starting to walk a fine line, on what's considered such.
Terry Newman says, just to clarify, the Italian and Irish do not constitute race. You tell that to the Italians and Irish. They think they're very special.
Well, they're an identity anyways. But I mean, just further on Nenshi, there was another incident that people have kind of forgotten about, and I know about, but if you remember when he was in that Lyft car in Boston, and he was babbling away, and the driver was headed up on Periscope, and Nenshi was talking about, he said, well, it's shown also Nenshi, one of the things with him is his profound arrogance. He really is, and he forgets that, he takes that pride in being a person of influence with a large reach, but forgets that there's some responsibility with that. And he was going on, he called the head of Uber at that time a dick. Well, that's fine, that's opinion. But the other thing was he went on this bizarre meandering saying that the city had been sneaking sex offenders through the Uber screening process, and that
turned out to be a blatant lie.
It was complete
he just
BS.
Made it up.
And the funny thing was, this is just speculation, but they had been fighting Uber coming into Calgary tooth and nail, hard as all get out, because cab drivers have, or cab companies had dedicated a heck of a lot of money to City Hall to make sure that Uber was kept out. After that little tirade, suddenly they found a way to let Uber into Calgary. You would think a company like that, when they've had a person of profile saying that they're slipping sex offenders through their screening, would have had some very serious legal things to say, but instead it just kind of disappeared, but Uber came in. I don't know. I'm just guessing here, but it almost seems like somebody decided to back off on their Uber opposition in a real hurry.
Sounds like it to me. Dave, there's a little bit more to this story too, involving another city councilor, Drew Farrell. Why don't you give us just a little bit of a primer on that before we move on to the next topic?
This is another exclusive we broke yesterday, Derek, involving the same businessman, Mike Taringo. He is also suing Drew Farrell for defamation and for basically for refusing to allow his development to go ahead. He's alleging that Farrell lives about in the same block as this building, didn't want it up, and moved to block it. He's also calling for a contempt of court ruling against Farrell for what he alleges is her refusal to produce evidence required by the judge. So Drew has run up already more than $158,000 in taxpayers' money defending this particular lawsuit. One of them was for $51,000 to Bennett Jones for one court appearance, one morning court appearance. They charged the city $51,000. So,
trial by combat? What the hell is that expensive for a single morning?
Well, I guess they had several lawyers there, and they are described as one of the highest charging law firms in Canada. So I guess maybe a better question is why the city law department has chosen to go outside, and when they do, why are they choosing the most expensive option available? So I guess when this comes to a head, I guess council will be asked to decide again whether Farrell will have to pick the total fees up, because they're only going to go up, right? They haven't even started the proceedings, and they're at $158,000. So it'll be up to council whether she has to pay it or taxpayers will cover it.
Dave, we heard more ringing. If I hear your computer ring one more time, I'm going to ring your head like a bell. I swear to God.
Sorry, man, I can't help it. It's the news coming in. The news never stops.
I know where you live. I've seen your address on the pay slips. I know where you live. I'm going to come and get you, and I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm just going to cough on you.
Nice.
Now I see the lawsuits coming.
I don't think this is a very hospitable workplace for me at the moment.
Well, we do things. I've threatened to beat you guys.
And I got a curl in my safe space afterwards. I am a snowflake.
Just mute your stuff. Mute your stuff on a broadcast. Just for an hour or a week.
I can't help it if it all comes back in. What's the phone number?
You didn't.
What's the phone number for our HR department? I'm calling HR.
Call my number. I'll forward it in.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
I apologize.
Speaking of oppression, we just the other day after Sunday service, a pastor for the I think the Grace Life Church just west of Edmonton towards Stony Plain was arrested for holding Sunday service in defiance of the Alberta government's lockdown orders. Dave, mute your phones, all your dingers. Maybe you're going to get the name the Dinger. You're going to replace Rick Bell as the Dinger.
Now we're going to get a suit.
You're going to be the Dinger soon. So just mute your dingers and tell us what happened in this case.
Well, there's been police actions against churches across Western Canada, BC, Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan. All of the provinces have had churches that refuse to close, keep their doors open every Sunday, and this particular pastor had. You know who that is? That's Sean, our tech guy, calling me. So I apologize for that. This pastor in Alberta had continued Sunday services, and despite being asked not to by authorities, the RCMP and the health people, and he held his service as usual on Sunday, and RCMP were there waiting. They waited until after the service, and then went and arrested the pastor. So it's a very lightning rod type move to do that when you're interfering with church and state. And I know, Derek, you wrote a very interesting column on it. I think "Live Free or Die," I think was the title, and it's certainly attracting a lot of attention.
Yeah, I suppose so. This one got under my craw a bit. Yeah, so I wrote a column titled "Live Free or Die." There was a gentleman who was angry at me. I said, like, look, when we're arresting pastors for holding peaceful Sunday services, we have to ask if we've lost something along the way. If we are really off the bandwagon here. And he said, at what rate of deaths would it take for you to agree to these lockdowns? And I think he thought my answer was being flippant or rhetorical, but it was not. I meant it quite literally. My answer was just simply, live free or die. I will live free, or I have no intention of living. And for an increasing number of people, that's the case. Opioid deaths are up. Suicides are up. People are dying from not getting treatment necessary in hospitals because of critical surgeries getting canceled, or non-critical surgeries being put off, which is harming people's quality of life and therefore making life unbearable for many people. My basic point was, look, it's not up to me to say how bad does COVID have to be before I accept my liberties being taken away. The burden is on the person taking away the liberties to justify to the person having them taken away why it is necessary. And very clearly, what we are doing right now, arresting pastors for holding Sunday service, fining and arresting small business owners for opening their restaurant, clearly that is not proportional. Clearly that's not justified. So as the publisher of the Western Standard, I actually don't get a chance to write nearly as often as I'd like to. I spend most of my time managing the business side and helping with editing in the background. I don't get to write very often. So when I write, I'm particularly pissed off. Corey's always pissed off, so we can always write. And I get pissed off a lot, but I have to be particularly pissed off to get motivated to write now and take the time to do it. So that was kind of my take on it. Corey, I think I could probably predict relatively safely how you feel about a pastor getting arrested like this. So maybe give us your view on the political fallout of it. Is this going to damage, further damage, respect for the province's lockdown policy? Absolutely,
and we're getting divided all over. And I mean, as we've acknowledged repeatedly, I am a dedicated heathen. Religious services aren't a priority to me.
I've seen you burst into flames
on occasion. And but I understand the importance of protecting the rights for people for things that I don't necessarily take part in and enjoy. That's what protecting rights is about. And freedom of religion is a huge one. It's in every modern constitution. It is there to be protected. And religious services are incredibly important to a lot of people. This is a lot of people's social outlet. This is where they get together. This is where they visit friends. This is where they feel spiritually better afterwards. Again, we aren't doing a cost benefit on these lockdowns. We really aren't. And we're forgetting about some of these costs. Like there's a church, right? My next door neighbor, actually out Prentice, there is a church. And it's just got a small congregation, mostly senior citizens. They've been all locked up at home, not able to go there now for the better part of a year. And this is what leads to senior citizens' depression. This leads, there is a cost. I mean, suicides happen with people. Again, seniors or even younger people, they need those social places. So let's, Notley is applauding the lockdown or the arrest of this pastor. Look, these churches provide a benefit, and we're taking that benefit away, and there's a cost to that. We've got to address that. We've got to look at both sides, and we're only looking at one. And to expand on that rant, just to quickly bring up, since the dinger came up earlier, I have to credit him with a recent column. He wrote on how...
Sorry, which dinger? Our dinger or the Sun's dinger?
The Sun's dinger, the original dinger, Rick Bell. And but that infections are very low right now. We've really, they're knocked down, and so on. And what are we hearing from the mainstream media? They're finding every expert they can to tell us about the new variants and tell us about all these new ways we're all going to die and that we've got to stay locked down and why it's so darn dangerous for us to allow some people to eat in at some restaurants. And again, why it's evil for a pastor to hold a service for a handful of people. At what point will we start allowing things?
Yeah, I mean, we had some breaking news yesterday where 2 members of the UCP government have said they've had enough, and they joined the national and the lockdown caucus. That was Angela Pitt, an Airdrie MLA, who's also the deputy speaker, and
There's the dinger.
Drew Barnes. So there's 2 Alberta UCP members that have joined, broken ranks with the government. And Angela Pitt told me yesterday, 100% certain that there's going to be more to follow. So this issue could start tearing the UCP party apart from the inside.
I was not very shocked that Drew Barnes joined this. He's spoken out previously against the lockdowns quite openly. I think by this point, he's DGAF. He does not give a you-know-what. It's quite bizarre, quite rare to see this in the Canadian system. You see this in Britain all the time. It's a similar parliamentary Westminster system, but you have backbenchers actually feel free to speak out on issues and not be just a bloody Borg drone all day. But it's extremely rare in Canada to see it, particularly from a member of a governing party. So Drew Barnes was not very surprising, but Angela Pitt, that really shocked me. I know her fairly well. When we served together in the Wild Rose Caucus, she was not the type to really rock the boat. I mean, as I knew her, she was happy to be there, happy to be a part of the team, played ball. I've never seen her stick her neck out on something like this before. It was quite shocking. And so either something has snapped in her or there is something bigger at play. You know, she said there's a certainty there'll be others. We'll see. I'll believe it when I see it. But I know matter of factly, I can tell you, I know very personally, there are other UCP MLAs who are opposed to the lockdown. Most of them are afraid to speak out. But Corey, what does this say? Like, is this the sign of really the party, the caucus, and Kenny's leadership kind of fraying at the seams here? Or can we read anything more into this other than just 2 people speaking up?
Oh, just 2. It's hard to read in. And as you said, Drew is Drew's own man. And when I interviewed him the other week, he's still, it's nuanced. He's not opposing just for the sake of opposing or being a burr in Kenny's butt. I mean, he was talking about nuanced discussions, like Medicine Hat area where he represents doesn't have the infection issues and COVID issues that urban areas do. So maybe we should be looking regionally rather than these big blanket policies. Like, he was just doing his job as a regional representative. Now with Angela, it was usually quite, kind of a quiet background MLA who does her job but doesn't get into the mix on some of the bigger things. It was unexpected and unusual. But the UCP is in dire straits. I mean, they have been in constant retreat mode, whether it's the coal mines, whether it's the lockdowns, whether it's sports reopenings now and non-reopenings. They're a party that's just been floundering for months. They're dropping in the polls. And, if you want to see a caucus fall apart, make some of those members start fearing for their reelection. And we're getting into the 2-year mark. And if these MLAs start thinking, you know what, I'm better off somewhere else, they're going to jump. That's just the way it works in politics. So they got a lot to get together.
Yeah. No, I think nobody was shocked about Barnes. But Pitt doing that, I think, should be a big wake-up call to people in the Premier's office. I mean, you don't generally see this from very popular governments or where you have a popular leader of the government, the Prime Minister or the Premier. But when you get into the mid or low 20s in approval, people might start to take a bit more liberties in pushing the margins. I'm just surprised to see some of those who are. And it's interesting. We'll see if there's more. Actually, I have sources telling me there are going to be more as soon as today, possibly, including a federal member of parliament and an Alberta MLA. But we won't break that until we have the confirmation in front of us and we've spoken to them. Dave, let's give last word to you before we wrap up.
I apologize for my technical errors. Stay warm, everybody.
Okay, well, that's it from me. Thank you very much to everybody who's watched. If you are a Western Standard member, thank you very much for your support. We rely on you to do what we're doing without accepting any government subsidies from the federal Trudeau government. It is with your help that we're able to do what we do. If you're a business and want to advertise, please contact us, sales@westernstandardonline.com. We are close to selling out our advertising inventory, but we on the website, but we still have a lot of other opportunities, particularly in selling advertising on this show and in some of our other programming and newsletters and whatnot. But if you're not yet a member, please go to westernstandardonline.com and become a member. Very soon, we're going to have a limited soft paywall in place. And if you want to have unlimited access to independent Western news, you're going to need to become a member in a matter of days here. So thank you very much, Corey, Dave. Pleasure as always. Dave, I guess stay warm, stay off the train. And Corey, Godspeed on the train.
Yes, and by the way, just one last note. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, seek it out. It's the Western Standard. You just search on YouTube, you'll find it. Subscribe, because I'll be putting videos up. We're putting more and more, and there's content appearing there, and you want to catch it quick. If you're a subscriber, it shows you when that material has gone up there. So be sure to click in there.
Yeah. Oh, and actually, we did actually, I think, skip something today. We're not going to get into it, but Bryce Boness, that can't be a real last name. It must be from Bryce from Boness, I'm going to see.
Might be real.
Yeah, if your last name is Boness, that's pretty awesome. But best neighborhood in Calgary. But O'Toole shuffling Pierre Poliver out of the finance role today. I'll just say, the one guy who can excite conservatives in the Conservative caucus, you're going to shuffle him to a mid-level portfolio. Brilliant job, Aaron O'Toole. I hope you enjoy being leader of the opposition. That's it for today. Thank you all very much. Godspeed.